Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Allie Libb, and I'd like to welcome you to today's ReadyTalk webinar, the second in our Future of Work series titled, How to Future-Proof Yourself for Tomorrow's Workplace. ReadyTalk is pleased to bring you this six-part webinar series, which is designed to provide you with an inside look at the state of today's business environment and how key components are adapting to technology. Experts in office design, IT infrastructure, workplace process, and training will share their expertise and experience to provide you with key takeaways from each session. So before we get started, I'd just like to cover a couple of housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and we will send you a copy of today's slides and a link to the recording after the event. Also, if you have questions during today's session, please feel free to submit them using the chat feature that's located at the bottom of your screen. And if you'd like to contribute to the social conversation surrounding this webinar, please use the hashtag FOWWS, which stands for Future of Work Webinar Series. So as I mentioned, we have a great presentation in store for you today. I'm pleased to welcome today's speakers, Carrie Williard. Carrie is a workplace futurist for SAP SuccessFactors. Prior to that, she was the co-founder and CEO of Jambox, a video social collaboration platform that was acquired by SuccessFactors in 2011 and is now part of the SAP Jam platform. She is the co-author of the bestseller, The 2020 Workplace, How Innovative Companies Attract, Develop, and Keep Tomorrow's Employees Today, and has written dozens of articles, including a feature in Harvard Business Review on mentoring millennials. She blogs for Harvard Business and Forbes and is an advisor to the Business School at Colorado State University and the Center for Effective Organizations at USC. She also serves on the board of City Year in Silicon Valley. Her latest book is Stretch, How to Future-Proof Yourself for Tomorrow's Workplace. So with that, Carrie, I am happy to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. And, we don't have so many people on the line that it wouldn't be possible for us to just do questions along the way. So if you feel like you have some questions, I'll pause along the way and answer questions. So with that, let me kind of proceed through here and tell you a little bit about what we're going to go through. First off, I want to show you a little bit about the research that sits behind Stretch and why it's an important book for today, what some of the trends are that made us think that people have to be thinking about this, and then specifically some practices to future-proof yourself. We're going to give you a half dozen tips to walk away with on things that you can do to think about how do you prepare yourself for tomorrow, especially as it comes to your career. But let me ask you a question that I asked on a survey that we did with Oxford Economics. Go ahead and pick one of these in the poll that's up on the screen right now. What concerns you most about your future? Is it wage stagnation, economic uncertainty, less opportunities for advancement, your position changing or becoming obsolete, or inadequate staffing levels? Go ahead and select one of those. And when you've had a chance to make an answer here, I'm going to skip to the results. And here we have economic uncertainty, less opportunities for advancement, position changing. Interesting how inadequate staffing levels is really affecting this audience. So this is perhaps the highest I've ever seen on any of the polls we did in terms of a percentage who are concerned about inadequate staffing levels. I think that probably reflects people being in, non-sales roles kinds of things in this audience and what's happening to the support roles, especially in marketing and IT. Well, when we asked globally, 5,500 different people, what was concerning them most about the position, the thing that was really affecting people the most was their position changing or becoming obsolete, then there's not enough opportunities for advancement, and then the inadequate staffing levels. So not huge differences in percentage points between those, but what you can see is that people are concerned about the future and their opportunities for the future. As I said, we got this from doing a study. We did 27 countries, twin studies, one of executives and one of employees. And when we were doing the employees, we were particularly interested in what the employees of the future would be because we were asking future-oriented questions. And so half of those employees were millennials, those people under 35 that were in the workplace as well. So when I refer to some research coming up here and say our survey said, this is the survey I'm talking about that was done, I work for SAP, so in collaboration with SAP and Oxford Economics. The other thing we did was, this is my co-author, and in case you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I have a hard-to-spell name, so I picked Angler because I fly fish. So we did our dissertation work together, and we looked at over 1,000 academic papers trying to find out what is the best that's out there on how people can stay current and be prepared for tomorrow, and talked to a number of chief learning officers to kind of validate our surveys and so on. And so, I feel pretty confident that we've done our homework, in other words, in order to kind of get there. So what is it about the future of work that's really going to change us? And personally, after spending quite a bit of time doing research here, I think that we're in the midst of one of these huge era changes, much like there was to the industrial age. And to the knowledge age. I think now we're really shifting to the digital age. I was speaking at AT&T last week, and what they said is we are becoming a software company. So something that we thought of as almost entirely bricks and mortar and hardware and routers and networks is now going to be a software company. And so that the emerging technologies and the explosion of data that have to be defined. The number one job search by recruiters on LinkedIn is for data mining specialists or data scientists. There are huge demographic shifts. So we have in the United States, now, this year, every day, 11,000 people turn 65. And the group behind it, the Gen X, is a small generation. When they started being born in the 60s and 70s, women started to delay when they had their first child, up by 7.1 years in the United States, and enabled by birth control. So we just had a small generation and then kind of kicked back in when millennials started being born because women started approaching the biological clock. And so we have a smaller Gen X and a very large millennial generation. Millennials will now make up 50% of the workplace. And in another 50% statistic, more than 50% of the babies born today in the United States are non-Caucasian. So all you have to do is kind of project the workplace to see that we're going to have a really incredibly diverse workplace working in a hugely global organization. Today I'm in Seattle because I'm speaking at Microsoft in a few hours. I live and work virtually from Colorado, and my local headquarters are San Francisco, but my company is owned in Germany. And it wouldn't surprise me if we have people from outside the United States on this call today. So the skills we'll need to work in a global environment are increasingly important, especially with all of the complexity. And I think this is going to mean a redefinition of what it means for jobs, where people are going to move in and out. We were talking before the call on somebody who's been in an organization and now has been freelancing and maybe is going back in an organization again. And I think these lines between the contractor, the freelancer, and so on is really going to shift. In our survey, we asked executives, are you planning on using more flexible workers, whether they're contractors, consultants, part-time, temporary workers, and 83% agreed that that was the future of their staffing plan. Oxford told us they can't get 83% of executives to agree that the sun rises in the east. So that is a compelling survey. And I saw someone since then has come up with a 91% figure. So this, I think we're moving towards a bit of a gig economy when it comes to that, to what jobs are going to look like. And so then you ask the question, well, could you become obsolete? Does a robot want your job? And let's think of a robot not necessarily as just our Jetson, if you ever saw reruns of that, vision of a robot, or Star Wars vision of a robot, but an algorithm or software that could be in the background. Here is a picture of the hotel check-in for an almost virtually run hotel in Japan. So you can come up to the woman on the left, who's called an actroid, who responds in natural language to you. So the algorithm that's powering her has been designed to express emotions based on her answers and looking at the person across from her. And if it kind of creeps you out to go to a woman, you can always go to the little velociraptor. And apparently children and women really like going to the velociraptor. So they ship around the newspapers or luggage delivery or room service on trolleys that are completely roboticized. So just a very different thing. And of course, Japan has got a very aging population, and is in a sense leading the way on this because they don't have a replacement population. They're a very crowded country, so they don't allow a lot of immigration. So they are increasingly relying on robotics to help care for the aging. Here's an example of, and I'm sure everybody in the audience would love to have something that makes your dinner for you. And if you think this is out of possibility, this is actually was introduced at the Consumer Electronics Show in Asia by a UK company. And just going to show you just a little tab here. And, you know, I'm looking for the play button, guys, and I don't see the play button. It says click the play button. You can see these picks from the menu, and all you have to do is send them to the side. And the robot. I'm all for robots when they're going to help us get better, but robots are actually kind of after our job. Let's look at this. Go ahead and scan each of these two articles. One of them has been written by a robot, and one of them was written by a human. So look at the two and decide which one you think is A or was written by a robot. I'm going to flip to the next slide here, in which you're going to get to pull from make your choice from A or B. And now, tell me which one you think was written by a robot, A or B. And let's see if you can tell. All right. A. Well, we've got it right. 55% to 45%, now 54.5 to 45.5. So as you can tell, really close, really close. So which is really interesting because it's now estimated that more than 90% of the news will be written by computers by 2030. But it's not just the news. It's financial reporting, so your Q4 reports, those are approaching over 30% that are being largely written by robots. Medical diagnosis, programming, and which I think is really interesting. So for those of you who are software engineers or in IT out there, I started two companies only 5 years apart, and the difference in the second company was enormous in terms of being able to go get gems of code and just pull them down because so much was stored. And so it's not difficult for an algorithm to go do that as well if you just specify what you want it to do. Market research, legal research are already being done by algorithms and call centers. In fact, in a study that was done by Oxford University, they found that 47% of jobs are highly susceptible to computerization in the next decade, and another 19% of medium susceptibility. So what do we need to do to stay ready for the future, and can you indeed reinvent the business model of you to get ready for tomorrow? Well, one of the things that we think then really needs to happen, we interviewed hundreds of people to find out how do you stay on top of your career? How do you stay on top of everything you need to know? And we found it's not that it's great big transformations that you need to make, it's just constantly stretching your capabilities today to be ready for tomorrow. That we don't have enough time to hit the stop button, go get ready for tomorrow, and then restart the button. We have to just keep on doing lots of things every day to be relentlessly resourceful in getting ready for tomorrow. People told us there were three imperatives that they needed to have in terms of us thinking about what the conditions under which they're working. I was at a conference in Chicago a few years ago and of chief human resources officers, and someone stood up on the stage and said, "I'm not responsible for anyone's development except my own." And there was a little bit of a gasp in the audience and then clapping. And it came to me at that moment that really it has now switched to it's all on you to manage your career and to be ready for tomorrow. And people told us that over and over again. There's no magic magician behind the stage who's helping direct your career. As our CEO at SAP has said, no one cares more about your career than you do. And so it's really all on you to get ready for tomorrow. You need options because you may be at different life stages where you can be all out really pursuing something, or then maybe you've got small children at home, so you need to take a little bit of a step back. So you need different ways in which you can pursue. And everyone we talked to had some dreams about where they could take their career, no matter what age they were. I talked to, personally, 6 people who are over 100 years old working actively because they love their work. The oldest I've spoken to was 106, and she was still thinking about, well, what could she do next? So we all have dreams about our workplace. So let me kind of dive into the meat of the presentation, which is the 5 practices. Here's an overview of them. Quickly, 1, being able to learn on the fly. So not only through formal classrooms or webinars such as this, but how can you take the work that you're doing and leverage getting more experience out of it? Number 2, how do you be really open to opportunities? I'm going to tell you an amazing story about someone you might not have ever heard of. And then build a diverse network. The number 1 thing people told us in terms of the answer to the question, how do you stay current, was I hang around smart people. So what can you do to increase your ability to hang around smart people? Number 4, and we use this word greedy very specifically, be greedy about experiences, because that's going to be what really leverages tomorrow, and you have to be in charge of and directing your own experiences. And then finally, how do you stay motivated so that you not only bounce back from setbacks, failures, disappointments, but you bounce forward? So let's start with the first practice. and I'll give you a real quick tip on each of these. So, you probably everybody that's on the call thinks they're a good breather. If you were asked, do you breathe well? Everybody, almost everybody, unless you've got some sort of illness. If you're healthy, you think of yourself as a good breather. But if you go to a yoga class, you find out, and you start to study yoga a little bit, you realize, oh, I knew nothing about breathing. There are different methods of breathing for reducing stress. There's another method for relaxing. There's another method for pain. I was a chief talent officer for a Fortune 50 company, and I swear every resume that came across said that they were a quick learner. And I thought, how do you know? Because it's the natural human condition to breathe. It's the natural human condition to learn. So how do you know if you're a good learner? Well, there are ways to improve how you're learning in the midst of your work. It's estimated by a number of training theorists that we learn about 70% on the job, another 20% from mentors and bosses, and another 10% while we're actually in the classroom. So how can we improve that 70%? So here's our first tip. This one is borrowed from working with Harvard's Learning Innovation Lab. So they were kind enough to work with me on the book. And so think about the 5 to 7 major projects you have on your table, whether you're in marketing or IT or human resources or wherever you might be. What are the major projects that you've got on the table for this coming year? And you can think about each of those projects from one of 3 perspectives or stances. In a completion stance, you think, wow, I have got a lot to do. I've just got to get this stuff done, and you check it off the list. The benefit of a person who has a completion stance is that they get a lot of work done and they're very efficient. The side effect of approaching a project from a completion stance is you have a tendency not to learn much because you're focused on efficiency. In a second stance, a performance stance, you might think, wow, I need to do this well because my boss is relying on, it's going to be very visible, other people are going to see it. And in a performance stance, just by taking the mental moment to say, I want to do it well, you begin to compare to other projects, and that creates learning in an informal way. And then finally, you might have a development stance. And in a development stance, you say, this project could help me head in a direction of where I want my career to go, or could leverage me to a next step. It's important for me to not only do it well, but to learn some additional things while I'm doing it. So you might call an expert, for example. In one study, for those of you who are in IT, they found that spending 15 minutes with an expert helped improve productivity by 20% for people who were software engineers. So you might call an expert. You might decide to take a class. You might decide to join a webinar, whatever it might be. So here's tip number 1 as a takeaway today. Think about the work that you've got on your plate for 2016, and are there 1 or 2 projects that you could approach with a development stance where you're going to try and learn more about the work that you're doing and expand on it. If you're a person who's always focused on doing a lot of work in the completion stance, can you move up the chain on just 1 or 2 projects? Or if you're a person that does everything, tries to do everything well, can you move some to completion and move 1 up to development? And if you're a person who really likes to learn with everything, then you're probably not getting as much done as you need to get done. So can you move some things down so you can really dive deep into 1 project? So there's tip number 1 for learning on the fly. We have another half dozen in the book, but here's tip number 1 for you to be able to learn on the fly in terms of ways to approach work. And I'm going to skip this one, but I have in the book, here's what I will say on this slide. Think about the question, are leaders born or made? And a person whose work I really admire, and if there's one book I would recommend that you read, it is by Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, from Stanford, called Mindset. And what she argues is that too many of us fall into the habit of thinking we are who we think we are, and maybe we can improve that a little. And she says, no, we need to be thinking that it's impossible actually to know where people will become, who people will become. A growth mindset, she has two mindsets, growth or fixed. A growth mindset believes that true potential is unknown and unknowable because it's impossible to foresee what can be accomplished with years of passion, toil, and training. And so in her view, yes, you might have been born with some skills to be a leader, but you can be an extraordinary leader if you will just commit your mind to it, or you can be extraordinary in your field, or whatever it is that you choose to do. So let's move to the second practice, which is be open, recognizing opportunities and seeking new options in your daily work. So don't look it up on your phone, but I'm curious if anyone knows who Ron Wayne is. And kind of the story about Ron Wayne is that he worked at a gaming company, and two of his buddies said, let's do a startup. They had some ideas about what to go do on the startup. So he did it on the side and weekends with them. He was the first logo designer. He wrote the first tech manual. He was a little bit older than his two partners. And the company started to go somewhere. So two of them, the other two, decided to quit. One worked with him at the gaming company. The other worked at HP. So they quit. And they asked him to quit and start working on the company. He said, no, he didn't want to. And so they offered to buy him out. So they bought him out for $1,500. And then, the company continued to grow. The company that they had founded continued to grow. And about a year later, they got some venture capital funding. So again, they asked Ron to come out. And he said, no, I'm really working on a project for the CEO on strategy. They're really depending on me. I just think I'm going to stay here. And when you read his Facebook page and the stories of what happened, you realize that he once he made up his mind, he just stayed with that. He didn't reconsider as it went along. And not everybody will have the same outcome they do. But who is Ron Wayne? Ron Wayne's partners were Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. He is the third founder of Apple Computer. He owned 10% of Apple Computer when it began, and which he sold for a total of $15,000. And of course, he'd be a billionaire by now. And not many people have heard of Ron Wayne, but he is the third founder of Apple Computer. And it just goes to show that we never know what opportunities are slipping us by. And if we think, okay, well, I don't have very many opportunities to be in Apple, the thing to actually consider is that even small actions can yield big results. Here's a picture of a man named Chris James. Chris was passed over for he was a senior director, and he was passed over for VP 4 times. And Chris said at that time he almost had a fixed mindset. The fixed mindset being, well, I guess I'm not really cut out to be a VP. Everybody's decided I can't be a VP. So he had a new VP come in over him. So he said, once again, I'm training my VP on my work. But this time the VP said to him, listen, if you will, let's get a bargain going here together. I get to give you lots of feedback on how you come across and give you really challenging projects, and let's see if we can't get you to the place that you want to be. So he agreed. And in the first 6 months, he said he got more feedback than he had in his entire life. You might not be able to tell this, but if you look at the picture, he's Welsh. He comes across as a bit like the Downton Abbey butler in terms of kind of dry sense of humor and so on. So Chris is one of those people who, when he would listen to a presentation, would immediately start to identify the reasons why an idea wasn't going to be good. So people saw him as resistant to change. They saw him as not open. And he said, I'm more open than anybody I can think of. I've moved around the world to be in jobs. I've been, I change all the time personally. But he didn't realize that he was coming across that way. So just a little bit of feedback really helped. And so what happened for Chris was a year later, he did get that promotion to vice president. 2 years later, senior vice president. Another year after that, he got a job as the COO of a software company. And 3 years after that, Chris is now the CEO of a software company. So even though we think we might be stuck, perhaps it's just little things like getting the feedback we need that can get us to that place. And one of the most important things to think about is feedback, and are we listening to these opportunities? I like one of the things that out of Liz Wiseman's book, Rookie Smarts, that because when we become more expert, we start to set rules about how things work, but rookies don't have those. So are there ways for us to adopt a rookie mindset and still leverage being expert? So part of it, I think, is thinking about what is the feedback that we're getting, and are we applying it? Most people are probably, according to researchers, only applying about 30% of the research they get. So here's some tips on let me give you a tip on getting the feedback you need. I had somebody when I was a chief talent officer who came in, and he was in the job about 6 months, and he went around and asked people if I'm new in the job, making some changes here, but at the same time, I wonder what you think about this. If the perfect person were doing this job perfectly, what do you think they'd be doing different than I'm doing? And the interesting thing about that question is it sets up a safe environment for the person to get feedback, because they're not really saying too much about you and more about what they could envision as the perfect role, but it also opens up the conversation to give you feedback. So use the perfect person comparison as one way to get feedback from people. And just another thing to think about is, as a tip, is that a lot of people don't realize this, especially in the United States, because it's kind of a cultural thing to associate. If somebody's really confident, they must be good. Actually, there's no relationship between confidence and competence. Somebody who's really competent may be low confidence. For women, this is particularly, and people from disadvantaged backgrounds, this is particularly of concern. And so, for example, in one HP study, they found that for when men were applying for jobs, if they thought they had about 60% of the qualifications of the job, they'd go ahead and give it a shot at applying for it. Whereas women needed almost 100% in order to apply for a job. I had a friend who said that her boss gave her an assignment that this friend was in marketing. Her boss gave her an assignment, and she felt like she wasn't really going to be able to do it. It was just above her skill level. She went back to her boss and said, I just don't know if I'm prepared to do this job. And her boss said, do it scared. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we can think about is, can we stretch just a little bit so that frequently we feel a little bit afraid about what we're doing and whether we can actually do it, because that means we're stretching. So doing something scared or applying for something that we don't think we're fully qualified for. When somebody followed up to find out, well, why didn't the women apply? A lot of them said, well, I didn't want to worry. I didn't want to bother the other person that was reviewing my resume because it would just be disrespectful to their time. Actually, that's just not a worry that we should be thinking about. We should be, seeing what can I do to stretch? How can I stretch? And if I've got more than half of the qualifications for the job, can I stretch to learn the rest? Okay, the third practice, and this is the one that you'll recall I said was the number one answer people gave us was, what can I do to build the way I stay smart and the way I stay connected to the future is hanging around smart people. So what's that mean in terms of what you should have? How many people should you have in your network? What kinds of networks should you have? So think about this question. If you needed a new job today, what kind of network would serve you best? So let me describe two networks to you. One of those networks is a strong tie network, this inner circle here. These are the people that when you need a job or you need something that is really an important piece of information you need to tie to, this is the people that you could pick up the phone and call them or send them an email. They've kind of got your back. They'll make an introduction for you and so on. And then the second kind of network is your weak ties. These might be people that you keep in touch with about once a year, that are your, from hobbies, from people that you've worked with in the past, your online friends, school friends, whatever it might be. So if you needed a job, which one would you pick from? The weak ties or the strong ties? And if you're like most people, you're going to answer strong ties. Well, of course, the answer is that you need both, but it turns out that weak ties are the ones that are going to really help you get a job or get access to new information that you don't have already. And the reason is that because strong ties tend to know each other. They might be people that you've worked with, and so if you work in large companies like I have, you build deep support relationships, and that's why it's good. But they tend to know about the same opportunities. And if you reach out to your broader network, they're more diverse, hopefully, and they just know of more opportunities as a result because they're geographically diverse, they're perhaps in different industries now. Actually, one of the best things that's happened to me is two of the companies that I've worked for, three of the companies that I've worked for have been bought by other companies. And so the people that I knew just kind of dissipated to many different companies. And so now I have this network that's all over the place, although we used to be, closer and tighter as a network. So how big is that number? Robin Dunbar has done some research on that, and what he says is if you don't keep your network updated, connected at least once a year, then it starts to dissipate. So you may have 3,000 or 4,000 friends or connections on LinkedIn, or you may have hundreds of people on Facebook. But if you're not personally connecting with them in some way, whether it's just a private email or whatever it might be, that network starts to dissipate. And he says the ideal number is about 150, which is about the size of a tribe and how much and what we can kind of actively groom. Now, you may be an extraordinary extrovert and you can groom a lot more than that, or you might prefer to keep a tighter network and a smaller network that you can groom more frequently. But about 150 people is what you should maintain. And so besides the 150, we think another thing to consider is who are your 5 to thrive. And there's kind of a leadership maxim that says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And we were thinking about that and said, you know what, if you've got 4 kids, that's kind of like not fair. So we thought, who are the people that you're spending your professional time with? And are they inspiring you? Do they motivate you? Do they help you stay up to date? Do they make you your best person at work? Or are you spending time with people who are a little bit disgruntled about where they're at and they feel stuck and you're the one that's giving to the relationship and so on? And so here's our tip. Can you identify 5 people who really help you thrive and set up at least 4 meetings per year with each? When I was thinking about this myself, I realized that some of the people that I was meeting with 4 or more times a year were ones that were really wanting something from me, but I wasn't getting something back from the relationship. It was all in a giving thing. And I can do that. That doesn't mean I have to stop that. But it also meant that I wasn't spending time with the people that, gosh, every time I was with them, I got a new idea. I'd get a new connection or whatever it might be. So think about whether you have 5 people that really help you grow and can help you stay up to date in your field, and set up 4 meetings a year with them. All right, the 4th practice, which is to be greedy about experiences, because of course when you go to do any kind of next job, whether it's inside a company or moving inside a company to the next, you want to know what are the experiences you've got, which is why it's okay to be a little bit greedy and self-focused about this, because as one person told me, she was kind of going over her career with me, and I said, wow, it kind of sounds like you've had the same experience every year. You've got a certain rhythm to your job, and every year there's these kind of same experiences that roll around. She goes, yeah, that's true. And I said, so you've been in that job 5 years, so you really have 1 year experience for the 5 years you've been in the role. And she said, oh my God, I guess that's true as well. So if we're not careful, our managers can come to us because we're the go-to person in a specific thing. And instead of diversifying our experiences and getting broader and being ready for the future, we just kind of keep repeating the same thing. And so it's going to be up to us to figure out how to do that. And of course, one of the ways you can do that is to, as we've mentioned, stretch. Can you get in a little bit over your head? And so here's one tip. Just do that at least once every 3 months. If you sit back and think, when was the last time I felt over my head? If it's been more than a year, and if I have people raise their hands in an audience, there's maybe going to be 10 or 20% that say that. And you're just not stretching enough, that you're a little bit stuck and you need to move on to some experiences that are going to get you ready. We gave you a tip earlier on setting a learning experience goal on your own project. So what can you do in the projects that you have in hand to get ready for tomorrow? Can you volunteer for some projects that maybe they're not immediately within your group, maybe they're elsewhere? I knew one set of people that worked for a company that was fairly small. There weren't a lot of opportunities to move around, so they approached their boss and said, can we just flip jobs? And so no effect to the boss, because they promised to help each other be successful in the role. And so they changed jobs, got a partner and just flipped jobs so that they could each get new experiences. And you can kind of learn vicariously as well by reading or traveling. Or I heard Captain Sullenberger speak once. He's the pilot, Sully, who landed on the Hudson River, and miraculously no one died. And he was just kind of telling the story of his life, and he said, as much as we travel to all around the world, there are people who just go into their hotel rooms, crew who go into their hotel room and just shut the door and order room service, and they call those in the in the vernacular of the cruise, they call them slam clickers. And so I'd encourage you, if you get the opportunity to travel, don't be a slam clicker. Don't just go into your room and order room service. Experience the environment and the culture. If you get a chance to have dinner in someone's home away from your own home, do that. Or attend a festival, the Greek festival in your town, or whatever it might be. And then another tip in terms of getting you the experience you need, first off, a lot of times we think of a good boss as the person where you go to work and it's comfortable and fun to work there, and your boss is really understanding and helps you manage work-life balance, and that's a great boss. And you could look back 10 years from now and realize that you have not stretched. On the other hand, you might have a boss that is a bit of a perfectionist and wants you to redo things and get the work to be as excellent as it can be. I interviewed a number of people who worked for Steve Jobs, and they said, he wasn't easy to work for, but I did my best work when I worked with him. And so, you have to ask the question, what is a good boss? Isn't it somebody who's a career maker? Is it someone who helps me move forward? So here's a tip. The next time your boss hands you out an assignment, just ask the question, what do you hope I'll learn from this assignment? Or if you are a boss, every time you give out an assignment, tell the person what you hope they'll learn from it, because that will encourage us to learn on the job. And then our final practice is to bounce forward, and that means to just, be able to motivate yourself to move forward, because we all have dreams, but then, of course, life happens, things that we didn't anticipate. Our company gets bought out, or we started a degree that ends up not being what we want to do, but we're kind of along the way, and so we feel like we have to finish that degree, even though we know it's not what we want to do, or, we're the Ron Waynes of missing opportunities. But people who are really successful figure a way to get out. Can you imagine failing your college entrance exam 3 times and still going on to finish college, being rejected by the police academy? This was kind of his most humiliating moment. In his hometown, Kentucky Fried Chicken opened up a new store. 24 people applied. 23 were hired. He was not. So he started a company. And if you don't know who this is Jack Ma of Alibaba. So he started one of the most successful companies in the world in China, kind of like the PayPal and so on of China. So just a phenomenal, able to recover from a lot of things. So just one kind of tip to think about when you are in a really bad situation. It turns out that we learn more from our bad experiences than we learn from the good experiences we have. We recover more from good experiences, but if we can help ourselves recover faster from bad experiences, that can really help. If you've ever played a game like tennis, you'll know that you just remember when you made the really bad mistakes. And remembering those is helpful because it helps us not repeat them and to do new things. It's the state of the human condition to learn from failure. But we can, instead, in thinking that and kind of dwelling on it as failure, think about it as, geez, how can I move forward to really be in the next state? So here's a tip. Sometimes when you're in one state and you want to move to the next, people keep you in a box. So I'll give you an example. I was working with someone who really got feedback on his 360, that he was late to meetings all the time and disrespectful as a result. This was an organization where being on time was a really high cultural value. And so he said, okay, well, I can fix that. So he just showed up to meetings on time for 6 months solid, and he got the same feedback on his 360 again. He said, that's not fair. I know for a fact I've been to every meeting on time. And so we suggested, hey, why don't you let people know that you're in the room on time now, so that you signal, I'm changing. I've changed, actually, and I want you to see me in a different way. This happens to people who are adult graduates of programs. They might start at a company as one position, they get their degree, they're ready to move on, but people kind of see them in one way. Well, one way you can help is to just kind of announce that you're changing. And so what this guy did was he'd go into the meeting and he'd say, oh my gosh, 2 minutes to go, think of all the emails I could have done in that time. So, he just found kind of clever, funny ways to announce it. And then 6 months later, he got his 360, and that was not a non-issue. So sometimes you have to help people see the change. You can't just be, quiet in your performance and hope they'll see it. So just some kind of final thoughts here on, what are the capabilities you'll need for the future? And we looked at a number of them. I'm not going to run through each of these. The only thing I'm going to say about one of them on here is geek acumen. I think it's not possible anymore for someone to say, I'm not really technical. I don't care what field you're in, you must be technical, because it's working alongside the algorithms and the robots of the future that's going to give us great ability to stay and do the kinds of work that we want to do. But we did find that out of these skills on here, we did this by spending an entire summer looking at every study we could find on what skills are going to be needed for the future, and then synthesizing those. But we found that 2 are really a Powerball combination. So out of all of those, if you were going to focus on 2, The two are deep functional expertise. So whether you're in IT or you're in marketing or you're in finance, not only knowing your area, in marketing it might be social marketing, but getting into the subdomains. So if you're in a broad IT role, do you have some language capabilities? Do you really understand the software stacks and how they work, as well as being able to take in requirements and pass those on? And combine those with emotional intelligence. So get your deep functional expertise plus emotional intelligence. Those seem to be two key capabilities if you're going to work on something that can really help. And why emotional intelligence? Because it's how it helps us get a job, because collaboration is going to be one of the most important requirements for the future of work, because it helps you understand the politics of an organization, which every organization has, and how to navigate them. So if you combine these two things, that's just a really powerful combination. So what can you do now? I think one of the biggest challenges we hear is, gosh, I don't have time to focus. So of course that's going to mean you have to kind of sit back and think, well, what is your stop doing list? When Barbara and I decided to write this book together, we both have full-time jobs, so we had to say, okay, what are the things that we're going to say no to? Think about that one project that you can do in a development stand. Work on your Powerball combination, build your guild, and try something new to stretch. So I hope you get an opportunity to really think about how you stretch. Our book was picked by Amazon as an editor's pick for business and leadership in January, so it's easily available at barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com or your local store. So with that, thank you. Here's my contact information, and I'll turn it back over for any final questions or wrap-up.
Sure, Carrie, thank you so much for that excellent presentation. I do have a couple questions that I want to get to before we end, but if you do have additional questions, please feel free to continue to submit those via the chat function, or you can use the hashtag on social, FOWWF. So my first question, Carrie, is one of the things you mentioned during the presentation was the perfect fit method that an HR person used to talk to people about their jobs, and if somebody was to do this job perfectly, what would that look like? But I think from an employee standpoint, if someone from HR especially is approaching you and they want to create a dialogue of that nature, it could, be taken maybe as being, setting something up for change or radical change within the organization or things like that. So how do you approach someone with that kind of question without making them feel uneasy?
Yeah. So it turns out that I'm not sure exactly what I said that gave this impression, but it turns out that the guy that did that was head of the supply chain at a large company. So
okay.
There was no HR involved. He just happened to tell me what he had done, and I was in HR at the time. So what he did was just approach people for a coffee and say what he was trying to do was, get the feedback he needed on how he was doing. It was a large, complex, global organization, and so he was really seeking to understand how he was coming across. And I think too few people reach out for that feedback. So the technique he used was this perfect person comparison, and it just opened it up for people to give him feedback. So there was no third party involved. I just happened to hear about it, and so I think that makes it a lot safer. I agree with you that you don't want to get like HR involved in it and that kind of thing.
Okay, great. The second question I have for you is, you mentioned a lot of changes, obviously, you can make yourself to stretch yourself to get yourself, prepared for the next move in your career, make those changes. But what, out of those several, what's the number one thing you should focus on if you realize today during this webinar, I do need to make a change, but this seems a little daunting. What's the first one that someone should approach?
Yeah, I think the first thing that people should approach is getting their 5 to thrive. So I think a lot of times we spend our time with people because it's convenient or they are close to us at work or whatever it might be. And I think if we just improve our conscientiousness about who we're spending time with, not that it means that we have to spend less time with the people we already spend time with, but, on those lunch times that you might have spent alone, can you instead spend them with one of your 5 to thrive? So identifying this, I find that when I ask people to tell me, do they have 5 people who really do stretch them to become better, most people only have about 3. And so then if you get your 5, make sure they're diverse. When I thought about my 5, I realized, oh gosh, they're all women. So, they were ethnically diverse, but they were all women. So I decided I needed to add another person to get just a different perspective on the world and view the world differently. So, I had someone that I before had spent maybe once a year with, and I just kind of upped it to spending 4 times a year with. So I think that's really helpful. Hey, I saw a question on whether this is going to be an Audible or a audiobook. And right now we haven't approved it for that because we have about 30 exercises and worksheets. So we might, but we're going to let it sit for a while. It's a brand new book. It's only 2 weeks old. So we're going to let it sit for a while before we go to an Audible book.
Great. Well, thank you for getting to that, because I was going to mention that before we wrapped up here. So unfortunately, we are approaching the end of today's webinar, but Carrie, I want to thank you so much for a great presentation and providing all this great information to the audience today. And I know we've had a couple of comments from people saying, I just accepted a new position this week, and I'm looking to stretch my direct report to the next level. This information was impeccably timed. And, another person says, I'm in the process to search for a new job. So I think these tips are really helping people today. So before we go, I just want to remind everyone that we'll be emailing a link to the recording of this webinar, along with a link to download the webinar presentation. And as you exit the webinar today, we'd love to get your feedback. So there's a short survey. So if you could take a couple of minutes of your time to fill out that would be great. So Carrie, again, I want to thank you for a fantastic presentation and sharing all of this research and the information from your book with our audience. So to all of our attendees, that ends our webinar for today. Thank you for joining, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.